Hi again. Thank you for taking the time to join us today and answer our questions. I'm going to go ahead and give a short introduction. For those who will watch this video, I am here today with Dr. Anissa Mattison. She is a certified OBGYN. She is also the assistant dean at the Detroit Medical Center campus for MSUCOM, which is the Michigan State University College of Osteopathic Medicine. And she took the time to meet with us today and is very open to answering our questions. So,
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited about being here and speaking with you today on behalf of the members of SNMA.
okay, thank you. All right, so I have a small document prepared. Let me just open it. All right. So I looked a little bit into you a little more closely. I just want to mention first that I was actually one of the students who volunteered at school to be
Search
part of the
committee.
interview process of the assistant dean. So unfortunately, I didn't get to interview you, but I was ecstatic when I knew it was, honestly, a Black woman who they chose, because during my whole, I interviewed maybe 4 or 5 candidates, and there was no Black woman. So I was
Were there any other women?
I can't remember, but the Black woman definitely rang a bell to me. Like it just shined on my screen.
Right.
Right. So congratulations again for that.
And I appreciated the enthusiasm. I did hear that a lot as far as feedback once I started in the position. And that resonates. That lets me know still that there's not enough of us in these positions, and because the people who are coming behind are looking for that, right?
Right. Definitely. Because honestly, I had never seen a Black woman dean, let alone a Black woman DO dean. So
Well, I will say the pioneer for that I saw as a Black woman dean was Dr. Barbara Ross Lee.
oh, of course, yes.
And so, yes, and I had the same feeling when I saw her as a medical student, right? And she was at that point, I think she was either still at MSU or just leaving MSU to go to, I believe it was the Ohio Osteopathic School, and becoming the dean. And I was amazed by that.
Yeah, she's actually our speaker at our annual medical education conference this year for SNMA. She's one of our keynote speakers, and she's been coming a few years now. So she's been great. She is very much involved with the community still.
Absolutely. We just celebrated her, and she was the Grand Marshal of the Michigan State University Homecoming 2021.
Wow. I
So
love how involved
still
she
involved,
is.
yes.
Everybody knows her, and you wouldn't even understand how big of a deal it is to meet her, because she's so kind and just humble, and just she's walking amongst us like a regular person when she's such a big deal.
Yes. Yes, I agree. Could not agree more.
All right. So I saw that actually in college you wanted to become a scientist, a researcher.
I did. So yeah, I did my undergrad at Dillard University in New Orleans. So, all those HBCU students and grads out there, keep it going. And I majored in biology, and I did every summer I just kind of looked for opportunities and things that I could do to kind of keep myself busy intellectually. And that had a stipend.
Right.
And so I did research in molecular biology. I worked at a lab at the University of Missouri at Columbia. I worked at a lab at Northern Illinois University in DeKalb, Illinois. And actually was offered a graduate position at NIU to go ahead and I was working in the lab. It was a husband and wife team that worked in the lab, and they offered me a spot on their team with a teaching assistant, and enrolled in the PhD program. And that was the moment I wasn't expecting that to happen that summer. And but that was the moment that made me really sit down and say, okay, like now I have to make a decision. I have to choose.
Right.
So what am I going to do? And I mean, there were a lot of things that I enjoyed about the lab, and the challenge of it, and the discovery, right, of working in that environment, and hoping that you get, if not the results you were looking for, some other usable results.
Right.
But at the end of the day, when I sat with myself and thought about long-term what I wanted to do, I just thought that clinical medicine made more sense for me, and for my personality, and for the things that I wanted to accomplish. But there are days though where I think about, what if I had stayed on that path? And you could, the one thing about MSUCOM too, and they had this back then, but I did not take advantage of it. And that's one of the things I look back and probably regret, is that you can do a DO PhD program, right? And so you don't necessarily have to choose. But for me in that moment, I felt like I had to choose. I did not actually, when I made that decision, I didn't even know anything about osteopathic medicine. I had just decided I was going to go down the clinical medicine route. But I think if I could talk to the younger me and go back, I would probably do the combined program.
PhD.
Yes.
Well, we are very happy to have won you over. The community appreciates you.
I listen, I am very happy with the path that I am on. I love the choice that I made. I do think being in the clinical realm is where I was supposed to be.
Do you miss the research part?
There are times when I do, especially as I've seen like cancer treatments evolve, and, just the way that we're learning about things, all of the information with DNA that we've learned, that part of my brain wonders, like, where would that have led? Where would that have taken me?
Right.
But I absolutely love the day-to-day impact that I have when I'm educating patients, when I am educating future doctors, right? So the work that I do with residents, the work that I do with medical students, to me, that's the pebble in the pond, right? So just like other people had an influence on me, right? Dr. Barbara Ross-Lee. Now, if you ask her, she doesn't know who I am, but I know who she is, right?
Right.
When I got to MSU, I did the same thing you did, right? And so who did I see? I saw Dr. Margaret Agua, right? And at that time, I also saw Dr. Timothy Hodges. Those were the only two Black doctors that I saw when I got here. And so I know that I carried those things with me. And so I put those pebbles out there. And I think as I've been doing this long enough, and the residents that I've trained are out in the world and doing their things, I see that ripple effect. So my soul is well.
Hey. All right. I'm glad to hear that. Yes, again, we appreciate you so much. So I wouldn't say that I'm sad you didn't go the scientific way. I mean, I'm sure DO PhD you would have definitely been out there doing great things too, but I'm glad that you're here.
Appreciate the vote of confidence. Thank you.
All right. So what drew you to osteopathic medicine?
So when I made the choice to go into clinical medicine, then it was, you had to sit down and figure out, now what? Now, where? How does that happen? How do I get from here to there? And when I was researching medical schools at that point, I'd never heard of an osteopath, right? I had never even heard the word allopathic. I just, a doctor was a doctor, and you went to medical school to become a doctor. Those were the things that I knew. But as I started, and this was back in the day, before Google and internet. And so you just went out and bought this big book, and it listed all of the schools. And as I'm flipping through and trying to narrow it down and learn about the schools, that was the first time I'd heard or saw the word osteopath. And I didn't know what it was. And so then I had to figure out what that was. And as I started to read about the philosophy, right, the core tenets of osteopathy and the wholeness, and seeing the person, and it isn't just about the disease process, right, but what are the circumstances surrounding this and how does all of that impact what's going on with the patient. That made perfect sense to me. You know, that was just resonated with me, you know, the way that I grew up in interactions that I had with the medical system. I knew very well that a lot of times we were not seen as a whole person.
Right.
And that was a problem, and that was an obstacle. And so that was when I made the decision, and I only applied to osteopathic medical schools because if I wanted to go down this path, that was how I wanted to do it. I wanted to learn that philosophy and have that be my foundation as I went out into the world.
I'm so glad. I know, I'm so glad to hear you say that, because very often people either don't know about osteopathic medicine or don't see it the same as allopathic medicine. So I'm glad that, you know, you're here, you're a dean of an osteopathic school, and you're letting us know your point of view on that. You know, it's not just something that we're selling out there. It's really our way of approaching medicine.
Yes.
Like, yes.
Yes.
I love I love to hear you speak of osteopathic medicine in these terms. It makes me feel really good. And I do talk to a lot of pre-medical students and things like that. So I feel even more secure in the way I would speak to them, as in this came straight from our dean. This is the path that she followed. So it's not just for show, it's real.
It is for real. And I think, you know, I'm completely biased because I was trained here, right, at MSU. But there's so many people here who, again, those aren't just words. It really is a belief in what we do and how we do it. And so there is something special in the secret sauce.
All right. Okay. Now, moving on, I really wanted to ask you about mentorship. So I know that mentorship has played a big role in your life, starting with Dr. Valerie Payne Jackson. She was an OB-GYN, and she was the assistant director of the OB-GYN residency program.
No, she wasn't the assistant director. She was the program director.
Oh, yes, the program.
Got out into the universe and give her all her credit.
All right. So I'm sorry, that's my bad. So she was the program director of the OB-GYN program at St. Joseph Mercy Oakland Hospital. And then she encouraged you to apply, and you followed after her and became the program director after she retired. Yes. And also, there were Dr. Jonathan Rohrer and Dr. Carrie Hortos who encouraged you to apply for this position of assistant dean. So can you tell us more about how you developed those strong relationships?
Yeah, so and these things kind of evolve over time. When I first met Dr. Payne Jackson, I was a third-year medical student, just like you are, and right. Doing my rotations in my clerkship. And at that point, I did have in my mind that I thought I wanted to go into obstetrics and gynecology, but I was still trying to keep, you know, an open mind to other specialties as well. And when I did my OB rotation and I met Dr. Payne Jackson, you know, it was just like you were talking about Dr. Barbara Ross Lee. It was the first time I had, you know, was that close to someone who was doing the things that I wanted to do and who looked like me and who understood me. Right now, I did not get a lot of time, one-on-one time with her as a medical student because she was busy and the unit was busy and it was just a crazy environment. But I did have she, you know, she did carve out some time for me. And, you know, at that point, I just thought, well, if that's all I ever get from her, I'm so grateful, right? Like one day I think we had lunch together when I was a medical student, and I was, overwhelmed just by that. And that just seeing that, just experiencing that, it just went a long way. It let me know that what I wanted was not outside of my reach, right?
Mhm.
And that this could be accomplished. And from there, I went to a different hospital, did my internship, but then interviewed with her program for residency. Um, and when I was accepted in that program, again, I was just very grateful, because knowing that I was going to have someone like her as a program director. And don't get me wrong, Dr. Payne Jackson has a military background. She does not play.
I wasn't expecting that.
Right, but she was always very fair, just, and honest in the things that she did, in the way that she did them. And so I knew that I was walking into an environment where I was going to be giving a fair opportunity to succeed or fail, depending on the level of work that I did, and that I'd have the support there to do it. And so just walking into an environment with that mindset alone just takes a lot of stuff off the table for you, right? That I didn't have to worry about, and I could concentrate on the work of medicine, in learning that, right? In that work of professionalism and communicating with patients. And as I went through residency, just working with her, and in my senior year, I was the chief resident, and um, I just learned so much, right, directly and indirectly from her. So just kind of watching how she moved in certain spaces, and how, she had to conduct business. There were lots of times when she was the only woman in the room, certainly the only Black person, and the only Black woman in the room in some of these conversations, and how she stood up for us as residents and learners. And there was just so much in that. And we remained friends, right, after I graduated. And I went out and I practiced in Wisconsin for a while. And then when I moved back to Michigan, her group was hiring. So I got to work with her again. And so it just developed, it just kept evolving to these different, that's how opportunities, right? And that's how I came to be the assistant dean. I didn't know about that opportunity, and or what it necessarily entailed, but they did, and they knew me, and they made that connection. So sometimes just showing up
Right,
and doing what you're supposed to do goes a long way.
right. But really, I feel like for people at our level, when you said you had lunch with the program director, I'm like, how did you make that happen?
Well, let me tell you, this was a different time. So they only had about 6 or 7 residents. The program was newer, and it was a circumstance that happened that day that we ended up having lunch, because there was a resident that was there. It was the 3 of us, her, Dr. PJ, the resident, and myself, and the resident got called away. And so then it was just me and Dr. PJ.
Oh,
All right, the resident said, no, stay and finish your lunch, you guys talk. And so it just kind of evolved.
okay.
Right? But I know it's a different day now, and the whole setup of the program and how many people are on service, that's kind of hard to do that. So I wouldn't set that as a goal for a medical student.
Right, right.
But as a medical student, you may have opportunities, and this happens to me all the time. It just happened to me the other day, where a medical student says, hey, do you have 10 minutes? Can I just talk to you about, being an OB? I'm interested in it. And yes, walk with me, right? Because I'm heading across the street to the hospital. So you do have those opportunities, and you should take advantage of those when they present themselves.
Okay. How would you advise us to approach mentors, like creating that mentorship relationship and making it a strong relationship?
So I'm not gonna identify the student, but I'm gonna tell you the conversation, because I just had this conversation on Tuesday.
Okay.
And she asked me, would you be willing to be a mentor for me? Right. So yes, you want to make sure that you're direct and clear in what you're asking for. But my first question to her was, what does that mean to you? What do you tell me what the role of a mentor is to you, right? Because I don't want to sign up for something and I can't meet your level of expectation, right? If you tell me, if she told me, I want to meet with you every week and nope. I'm not able to do that. I can't, I
Right.
know that I will fail at that, the way that my life is now, right? But I wanted to meet periodically, maybe every month to 6 weeks or so, to kind of check in and, where she could ask questions or kind of pick my brain for things. I can do that. So you don't just say, do you want to be my mentor, right? You want to have some specifics about what it is you're looking for, right? I know I want to go into OB, but I want to know more about the lifestyle, right? I don't want to go into OB at all. I'm interested in internal medicine, but I just want someone who is in medicine, who can, who's been through the system, who can just guide me. Okay, look, you're right. You want people to know what your needs are. Because if I have one picture and you have another picture, I think I'm doing a great job, and you're like, I'm just wasting my time, right? and we don't want that. The other thing I would say is, don't be offended if you ask someone to be your mentor, and they say, I can't do that right now, but I know someone who may be able to, and maybe they connect you with someone else, or maybe they don't have anyone else to connect you with. But if they just say, I can't do that, you have to take that respectfully, right? And it's not personal, but a lot of people who are asked to be mentors are typically people who are already very busy and doing things, and they're involved in so many places, and people see parts of them and want to get some advice from them, which is a good thing. But at the end of the day, as a human being, we all have 24 hours. And part of what you have to do in any profession, any professional, for any working person, right? And especially women, and especially Black women, which is my lived experience. You have to know your capacity. And if you keep overextending yourself, right, consistently, you're going to get to burnout faster. And so some of that is that you have to protect yourself, and you have to protect your resource, right, which is you and time. And so sometimes people may ask you to do things that parts of you would love to do, but that you don't have the capacity to really do it well. And so, sometimes there are times when I have to say no to something, because I know that I've got a particularly busy time coming up. So it's not that, if you're the person asking for the mentor, it may not be that, they don't like you, you're not worth, none of that kind of thing. That just may be a form of self-care, right? Or the things that you're looking for in a mentor, maybe they feel like that's not their strong suit. And so that's not a good match. And they may be wanting to connect you with somebody who would be a better match. Right? So I just, when you're asking somebody for something like that, just understand how valuable time is. And so if they can commit to it, then you need to show up ready.
Right.
Those times. And if they can't, right, and say, okay, but can I give you my contact information if your schedule changes and you find time? I would love for you to reach out, or, but just don't burn bridges, but don't get paralyzed in the no either, right? You got to move on and find someone else.
Okay. All right. Now, still following up on that, how important do you think it is to have mentors that are relatable to you, whether it's religious background, cultural background, the path that they took? Now, it's not always possible to find one that is so relatable, but how important do you think it is?
I think that you're probably never going to find everything you want in one person, right? That's life. We love a lot of people in our lives, but we gotta take some annoying things with the things we love.
Right.
So I think it's good to have more than one mentor, right? And for different aspects of what you're going through. I think absolutely, as a Black woman, in medicine, it is it has been very helpful to have a Black woman as a mentor.
Mhm.
Uh, there's just certain things, right, that another woman, no matter what color she is, are going to understand about some of the nuances of being a professional woman. Um,
Mhm.
you know, and all that comes with that, right? And all of the other things that you are in your life, right? A
Mhm.
daughter, a mother, a sister, a wife, a parent, a caregiver, right? And so there's so many things that we can just kind of get right to the heart of, because you get where I'm coming from on that,
Mhm.
all right? But then there may be other people who, you know, if you've got a really specialized niche that you want to go into, right? And so if I wanted to go into fellowship and I wanted to be a gynecologist, and you know, um, it might be hard to find a Black female GYN oncologist that can serve as your mentor, right? But can you find some gynecologist
Mhm.
that you can sit and talk to, right, as an early resident, to say, hey, what was your path like?
Mhm.
Regardless of their religion, gender, right, ethnicity. That's valuable, right?
Mhm.
So you may have different mentors for different aspects
Mhm. That makes
of your
sense.
career. Yeah. Don't that's probably a better route, because you're not overwhelming any one person,
Mhm.
everything, and you're getting more opinions, right?
Right.
Of what the profession looks and feels like,
Mhm.
different people, which is good, because then it's creating, you know, you're creating your own reference library.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, that makes sense actually. I've never thought about it that way. But it makes sense to have different mentors that contribute kind of differently to your experience and things like that. And it gives you
Right.
different perspectives. The way we see things is not the same way that someone practicing, let's say in DC, might see things and things like that. So
Yeah. And so, in Ramadan's coming up, right? So if you practice, right, you may want to ask somebody, you know, right? OB-GYN is a crazy field, and you're on call and weird hours, and you know, okay, how do you deal with fasting?
right.
And being
Right.
all and right. So you'd want somebody that you could, you know, have those kinds of conversations with.
Mhm.
Mhm.
That makes a lot of sense. All right. Now about leadership. I believe the position of program director was one of the big leadership position, like probably the first, correct me if I'm wrong, big leadership position that you took on.
Yes. Hmm.
How was that transition from, a clinician just going about your day to now having to lead as Black women do?
um, you know, it's a big responsibility to when you think about what you have to do as a program director, right? And your responsibility in meeting all of the needs um, of the residents, and making sure that they're getting the skill set, both the, you know, in terms of surgical acuity, medical knowledge, but also in professionalism, and cultural competency, in making sure that these are people who are going to go out into the world, and just be respectful of the communities that they're serving. And at the end of the day, as program director, you're signing off and saying, yes, you know, we reviewed everything, and I feel that this person can go out and practice independently. It's a heavy lift. One of the one of the perks that I had in coming into this position is that I inherited it from someone who did an amazing job with it. And so the program, when I came on board, was already in great shape, already had a good reputation, right? Um, there were so many processes that were already in place for me when I got there. And I had been working with her as in the faculty position in the program for a while. So I knew the program well, right? So it's a little different than if you're coming on from outside of the institution, and you've still got
Mhm.
to learn kind of the culture and the norms of the program. So I had a head start with that. But again, I think just you bring all of your experiences, right? So I knew what it was coming through that program. I knew what it felt to be a resident in areas that, okay, maybe we could tweak this a little and just make it a little bit more friendly
Right.
for the learner. And so just little by little, right? Just trying to build on things. And I think one of the things that I learned too was that more brains are better than mine. And so you don't have to solve every problem yourself. And one of the things that I've always said to the residents from the beginning when I came on as program director, right? You are welcome to bring any problem to me. However, you need to come to me with some potential solutions, right? And we discussed things as a group, and we've tried things over the years in the program that were, some were my ideas, some were resident ideas, some of mine failed, some of theirs failed, but a lot of stuff worked. And it was because we talked it through in the beginning, right? And tried to think about, okay, what could be coming? What could be the fallout? And know that change is not easy and change is not perfect. And this, I always start change like that. This is not going to work out well the first time, but we're going to have to solve the problems as they come along and see what goes through, what happens. And so I think I've had very supportive people too in my department who were really invested in the program and my success and the success of the residents. And so that always helps when you don't have to walk in and get buy-in from everybody, when some of that already exists. I think just being open and being transparent with people is really what helps to build trust, and there are times when I think to be a good leader, you have to go into vulnerable situations, right? Because you can't control every aspect of everything. And so you have to go in sometimes knowing that you're a little exposed, but state your case and how you want to move forward in that. And there's just a lot to learn from that. And I think anytime you do something new, it's scary. But don't be paralyzed by that, because then when you start to see that you're getting some movement, you're getting some traction, and then you can come up with another idea, and you can push the bar a little bit more. And none of that happens without fear, and none of that happens without failures, right? So every failure is an opportunity for you to learn, right? Either something about yourself or something about the process. And if you can learn that and move on, you're good, right? Successful leaders aren't successful leaders because they didn't fail. It's because they didn't let the failure stop them. They learned from it and they kept going. That's all you have to do.
Yeah.
Going. Yes, learn and keep going. Take the lesson with you.
That is hard to do, but I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Listen, I'm not saying your feelings aren't going to be hurt. Or that, you're not, you're like, wow, I had this great idea and, it fell apart. And yeah, that you're going to take it personally. But you have to keep moving. No successful person has ever not failed at something. That's just part of the process.
That makes sense. So along those same lines, what has been the biggest challenge to you as a leader, Black female DO leader, whether it's in your role as program director or as assistant dean, or even just going out there? I'm sure you have a lot of meetings you have to be part of, or committees or things like that. So what have been your biggest challenge? What has been your biggest challenge?
I think so, and I've described myself in certain meetings and settings this way, as a triple negative, right? That's how I am. Black female DO. Right. Two by nature, one by choice.
I love the OB reference, by the way, with breast cancer.
Yeah, you got that. Yes. The triple negative. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think a consistent challenge that I've seen in throughout my career is advocating for us in spaces. And so when I say us, I mean all three of my things that I mentioned, right? Advocating for us as DOs,
Mhm.
right? And I worked in a hospital that's mostly allopathic physicians, and we had a DO residency. That's kind of how we started over there.
Mhm.
Advocating for us as Black women, both as a patient, right? And as a physician,
Mhm.
advocating for, you know, the promotions for Black women, recognition of the work that we're doing in this space. Um, and as, you know, trying to make people see who we are,
Mhm.
what we're doing, and what we bring, and what the obstacles are to what we're trying to do. Um, I think that has been the consistent theme, no matter if it's clinical, if it's administrative, right? It just, that's the consistent theme.
Mhm.
We have so much to give, and we're doing so many things. And we just have to remove some of these, you know, constructed barriers
Mhm.
that just create frustrations
Mhm.
in our lives. So I think that's been one of the most challenging things, even for me, when I started walking into these spaces. Um, you know, when Dr. Jackson left, then all of a sudden I realized, okay, I'm the person now who's the only Black person and the only woman sitting at the table. Right? Okay.
Right.
So um, and realizing that, you know, my experience and my perspective isn't the only one, right? You and I have a lot in common, but our perspectives on everything aren't the same,
Mhm.
right? And so, again, that's why I do a lot of the work I do, because I want you to be able to come and sit on committees with me too, because they
Mhm.
need to see that you and I don't have to agree on everything, but we're both there to represent different
Mhm.
perspectives, and just making sure that that voice is heard, and that we're given the choices, the
Mhm.
respect, and the opportunities that we deserve, right? And that is, again, both from a professional point of view, but also from patients, right? That they're getting and they're able to ask for, trying to give them um, the language and the tools that, even though you're not talking to me, you're in another doctor's office. Here's the things that you want to be asking for. Here are the things that you want to make sure you're getting across to the doctor who's taking care of you.
Mhm. Okay, that was really good advice. I'm trying to take it all in right now. And this is actually a personal question because you know, as you know, I'm the regional osteopathic chair for the Student National Medical Association.
Mhm.
And um I find it sometimes hard to open people's minds about deals, about the fact that we're different and we go through this whole medical journey differently and we have different challenges because I guess people who are part of the majority here, which are MD students or allopathic students or professionals, they don't see things the way we do, and sometimes they're just not interested. So
Yeah.
do you how would you advise me or anyone in this kind of position to approach those kind of people? How to open people's minds or make them a little more receptive?
So I'm probably going to give you an answer you might not be expecting on this particular question. I'm going to say that there is a certain segment of the population that you're never going to convince about some things. So I think the key is deciding where to spend your energy and where to say, thank you for listening. Goodbye.
Wow, that's
Because
that right there.
yeah, there are just some people who are just not, their mindset is not in a space where they're open to hearing what you're talking about.
Mhm,
Um, and I think one of the things that you're going to find as you go through your career um, is that a lot of times patients don't recognize whether I'm a DO versus an MD.
mhm,
They just know they see Dr. Mattison.
mhm,
Um, and that's how it's going to be with you, right? I see Dr. Kamga and I know she's great.
mhm,
She listens to me, and I, when I go in there, I feel like I'm going to be heard, and I know that I'm going to leave with a plan that's
mhm,
going to be reasonable, and she's going to follow up,
mhm,
right? And people are going to come to you, right? And then people are going to say, who is this Dr. Kamga? I'm hearing a lot about her, right?
mhm,
And then some of those people are going to say, oh, she's a DO,
mhm.
right? Then you can start. That's someone. Then you can start saying, oh yes, I am a DO, and
Right.
because they're receptive to it. So I think your work is going to speak for yourself, right?
Mhm,
Because you to earn your credentials, you're going to go through your medical training, you're going to stand before a board, you're going to defend your knowledge, you are
mhm,
going to become board certified. At that point, those are the tools you need. You don't need the approval of anybody else,
mhm.
right? To
Right.
tell you whether or not they agree with your position or your station,
Mhm,
and whether or not you should or shouldn't be where you are. Their thoughts on that are really irrelevant. You have to prove to the boards, right,
mhm,
to the certifying bodies. Once you do that, then you can walk out here and you're going to influence people just by being yourself and doing the work that you do, right? There are some who are just never going to get on board, and that's okay.
mhm.
That's okay. They can be over there, and you have all of this space to work in.
Right. That is so on point, Dr. Madison. I That resonates a lot with me.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's sometimes hard to understand that people can really not even be open to try to meet you halfway, then just not interested. And yes,
Yeah.
sometimes you just have to walk away.
Yep. And continue on your journey.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. And then let me see. We have about 13 minutes left, so I'm just gonna try to sneak in one or two more questions.
Okay.
What advice do you have for people who want to get involved in leadership, especially minorities? Like how to get your foot in the door, kind of.
Um, just start. Don't be afraid, right? So I mean I can speak to medicine because I understand that world. Um,
Mhm,
so you're already doing it, right? So as a medical student, you're getting involved in committees and you're a regional chair. So those things are wonderful. And so join a committee and then run for office on that committee. When you get into residency, I think there's definitely opportunities to lead there. So I've always put our third and fourth year residents on departmental and hospital committees to get them acquainted with that, right? And
mhm,
to acclimate to finding your voice as a doctor and speaking up in those spaces, right? You're in multidisciplinary meetings with administration, nursing managers, floor nurses, right? And you have to speak from the doctor perspective, and you need practice doing that, right? So if that's not happening in your residency, talking to your program director saying, hey, can I get on such and such committee? If you are in, whatever it is that is your passion,
mhm,
um, if you are interested in advocacy and underserved clinics or underserved demographics, find and I know in the OB world, we're always looking for people to join, right? The advocacy piece, right? So you can join ACOG. So find out whatever the national medical societies, the local medical societies that you can become involved in. All of them, regardless of specialties, love having, eager residents, young physicians involved. They would love to hear your voices and have you involved. And actually, AOA, I think right now is recruiting and would like the residents to be involved in more committees. So there are definitely opportunities. Just figure out what it is that drives you, what your passion is. I think you'd be surprised at how many opportunities are out there when you start asking about them. Right? Because everywhere I go, when I go to conferences and meetings, there's always an ask, right? We started a committee for this, there's a new committee for that, if anybody wants to be involved. So, raise your hand and take advantage of those opportunities.
And lastly, how do you balance, your leadership life, your family life, your consultant life? Like, how do you balance all that?
It's crazy. I'm going to be honest. But so here's the thing. And I residents ask me that, medical students ask me that. I don't think of it as balance, because to me that when I think of balance, I think of a scale and things becoming equal when they balance out. It's not equal. I can't think of it like that. In my mind, I think of it as harmony instead of balance, right? Harmony, so it works together, though, maybe the altos are kind of, showing out more. Sometimes the sopranos are winning. But there's a melody to it.
Right.
Because sometimes I have to be 100% a mom, right? There have been moments where I've just had to be a daughter, a mom, a wife, given my undivided attention, right? And when it deserves that, I'm there. But there are also times, and my, I've had to talk with my husband, right? And this needs my undivided attention for this amount of time, and I have to be dedicated to that. And they support that. So I think communicating to people when you're having those moments where you need to be completely absorbed in something. So if something's going on in my personal life, I have to say to my teams at work, hey, I have to step away. This thing is going on. I'm going to be out of commission for a couple of days, and making sure that things are in place for you to leave. Right. And when work is getting really crazy, saying to my family, okay, I am going to be distracted right now for this amount of time until I can get through this project. Right. So I think that's key, is communicating with people around you. The other thing is, I really just try to say yes to the things that really mean something to me, because your time is finite. There's only so much you can do. Your body's going to tell you need to sleep now. Right. You need vacation. You're getting out there. You got to sit down for a minute. And so, you can't say yes to everything. And sometimes you have to say no to things that are really great things. But if I know I don't have the time and the capacity, I'm like, oh, I'm not going to do it justice. I'm going to have to pass right now. And being honest with yourself about that, and letting go of that feeling of disappointing someone. You're not the only someone that they can reach out to for something. Right. But just getting comfortable with that. All right. Sometimes it's no, I'm sorry, I can't. Right. Otherwise, the harmony gets really syncopated, and to the point where you're like, okay, this isn't even a song anymore. This is just a mess. It's just a bunch of noise.
It doesn't really noise now.
Yes. And I will say too, I've always tried to find just small ways to check in with myself. Right? Whether that's getting a massage, whether it's just going to the bookstore for a little while by myself, might be a little weekend getaway by myself, right? Or getting together with girlfriends. So, having those things that recharge you, so then you can come back and do this work. Just, there have to be, for me, and everybody has to decide what that means to them. For me, I have to have moments of silence in my life.
Uh-huh.
so I can just regroup and then get back to it.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I used to in college. I don't do much of that now, but every semester after finals, I would go to the UHS and get a massage. It was like $20 for undergrad students. So every single semester of college, I did that and just helped me reset.
You have to find a reasonable place to do that now, because you have to stop practicing it as a medical student, because your life is going to get crazier once you get into residency. And so if you don't start to hold on to some of those things, no one's going to give you the space, the permission to do it, right? You
That's
have to find it. You better prioritize that. The end of semester is coming up.
That's true.
Check in with you. Right. I want to know what you did. How did you reward yourself?
That's true. I would admit that now I kind of like staying home. Honestly, when I have time off, I just want to lay down. So what I do now is I watch animes. I'm a fan of animes. It mentally brings me back to a time of my life where I had no issue whatsoever, just a kid. So it resets me very well to just feel like a kid again and just watch animes. So
Okay, but now I'm going to say this because we're living in Michigan and I know how this time of year gets. You can go out. Barnes and Nobles has a wonderful anime section.
Oh.
Yes, see, you didn't even know that. You got to go there and you discover it. You can get yourself a little beverage, a little snack, right? When the weather turns, it's nice. Go outside and read your anime.
That sounds good to me. I didn't even know that.
Yes, yes. I know that because of my sons when I
Oh.
yes.
Okay.
But
All
yeah,
right. Well, thanks for that advice.
don't close yourself in during your training. It's very easy and very tempting to do that when you're in training. You have to get out of your apartment.
That's fair. That's fair.
Okay.
Now, I kept this little bit for the end of the interview, which we're getting to. I mentioned earlier that when I saw the school got a new Black woman as assistant dean, I was very excited. So now I want to share with you my very first memory of you, which I think mattered to me more than all the great other times where you and I interacted. But my very first memory of you was I was working with Detroit Street Care, which is one of our organizations here in Detroit that pretty much packs up food and some goods for the community suffering of homelessness, and then we do street runs. And so we were packing up food that day, and who shows up? Dr. Mattison. That was probably within the first 2 weeks. It was either your first week or your second week.
I think it was in my first month, somewhere in there. That first month.
It was very early on. And then you just walked in, and that was the first time I saw you. And you were just so down to earth. You were there packing up sandwiches with us, and we were talking about anything and everything out there. And that is my best memory of you, I have to say. First and best memory of you.
I remember that day. Well, actually, Ivan sent me the invite to join.
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
And I was like, of course I want to come out. And it was snowing that day. We were in the garage. It was snowing.
Yeah.
But it was great. I got to meet all of you, and
it was amazing. It was amazing. Like just packing up food in a garage with the dean,
Somebody has to do it. But so Paola, that's exactly what I'm talking about, right? There was an opportunity. I was interested. I wanted to learn more about street care. Somebody extended an invitation. You go. That's how you start to build relationships and opportunities, right? Because you never know who's going to show up.
That's true. I definitely didn't expect you. Oh, wow. But yeah, so this has been absolutely amazing. There's so much that I personally took in during this interview, way more than I would have ever imagined, honestly. So I'm so grateful for you coming here today and speaking with us. Thank you so, so, so much, Dr. Mattison.
Oh, you are very welcome. I'm humbled to speak with you all and to share my experiences. I think the sharing is key, right, to all of us advancing as a community. right? The more people see of us out here, the more people say, oh, I can do that too. She can do it, I can do that too.
Right. No, so that this has been very inspirational, and some of your advices were applied to, as I mentioned, I'm going to apply them to my own life because I'm facing some of those things in my own life at the moment. So I really can't thank you enough, really.
Oh, you're very welcome. Very welcome. And I appreciate the invitation.
All right. So on that note, I'm going to wish you a very happy end of your day. Hopefully, hopefully the next meeting got canceled or something, and you can go home and get some rest.
Right. Well, it does look like I'll be able to get out here in time to go to the gym. So that's a win.
Sounds good to me. All right, Dr. Mattison, have a good one.
You too. Have a good afternoon.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.